Hello and welcome to Crime Watch Daily Updates. I'm your host, Anna Garcia. In 2018, I traveled to Van Buren, Michigan to dig deeper into the heartbreaking case of Egypt Covington, a talented singer who had everything going for her before it was tragically taken away. Everything was starting to line up for Egypt. She and her boyfriend of a decade, Curtis Meadows, were about to move in together. She won a music competition, Country Idol, and her career at a beverage distribution company was also taking off. On June 23rd of 2017, Curtis sent Egypt his daily good morning text, but he never got a reply. He called her, no response. That night, he went to Egypt's home and he found her with a gunshot wound to the back of the head and her hands tied behind her, wrapped in Christmas lights. Egypt's dog Ruby was there and seemingly the only witness to this horrific crime. Curtis was brought in for questioning and cleared of suspicion early on. Let's take a look back at the brutal killing of a young woman taken far too soon. When Egypt Covington walked into a room, people noticed.
She was so beautiful. Men flocked around her.
And when she'd sing, people listened.
She had a voice that could roll out there. She could belt. She had power in her voice.
Although blues was her favorite, Egypt could sing anything.
She won Country Idol here in Michigan.
Offstage, her career was also hitting a high note.
She had finally found a job that she really liked. She was working for a beverage distribution company, and she knew that she had a future there.
She was also passionate about Curtis Meadows.
She loved Curtis.
The two met nearly a decade ago, and the attraction was immediate.
Since she met him and knew him,
You had a crush on her.
Yes, most definitely. Most definitely.
But in the beginning, their schedules made dating difficult.
She was a bartender. I have a daughter. I was more of what you say, a 9-to-5er, and I'm going to work. She's coming home from work.
For years, they were on and off, out of sight, but never out of mind.
I thought about her constantly. Every scenario and situation I was in my life, I thought how much better it would be if she was there.
Even when they were broken up, she loved Curtis. She always wanted to be with Curtis.
And after almost 10 years, Curtis was finally ready to commit.
I think Curtis finally got to a point where he said, I can't let you go. You know, I'm in love with you.
What had changed?
We were on the same schedule. We could have a dinner and at 8 p.m. together, which you would say a normal relationship. So it was great. It was perfect.
So perfect, the two decided to take the next step.
I was moving in July. My lease was up.
Lindsay Briley says Egypt was excited about the move. In fact, it was the last thing the two talked about the night her best friend was violently murdered.
What is the last thing you said to her?
And that I was too tired to come over and she should try to come over my house. And she said that she had to go clean and get ready for Curtis to move in.
A text to Curtis a couple of hours later is the last time he'd ever hear from the love of his life.
I lay down. It was a little after 10 o'clock, and I told her good night, and I loved her, and she said nighty-night.
The next day, his usual good morning text got no reply.
Usually she's pretty quick within responding, within 5 minutes, 10 minutes. So I sent her another one.
Throughout the day, his texts and phone calls strangely went unanswered. So after a late Father's Day dinner with his daughter, Curtis headed over to Egypt's house.
Tried calling her one last time on the way to her house, and no answer.
When he turned onto her street,
Seen her car in the driveway, and my stomach just sank. I just knew something was right. I knew the ideal of her forgetting her phone was no longer there.
Egypt lived in a duplex with her little dog Ruby. When Curtis walked up, he noticed the door was open.
I took a step in, 2 steps, and I yelled her name, Egypt, and her dog, Ruby, barked.
Ruby comes running into the kitchen, and Curtis immediately notices something is off.
Usually when you see Ruby, she just can't wait to like jump in your lap and kiss you, but she just looked at me, made eye contact, and turned around like, follow me.
What Curtis saw when he followed Ruby will haunt him for the rest of his life.
And I seen her feet, and then I took one more and I seen her. She was bound with her hands behind her back in a fetal position, laying on the ground, blood covering her head. And, you just know she's gone.
Horrified at the sight, Curtis runs outside to call 911.
I don't remember any of that call. I don't remember anything thereafter. It was just like I blinked.
Egypt Covington had been shot one time in the back of the head. Her depraved killer didn't stop there.
Her sister said that she had been tied up with Christmas lights.
Yes.
Was she tied to the front or the back?
Back. She was laying with her left side up, her face down, kind of like in a fetal position with her hands bound behind her back.
There was no sign of forced entry or of a robbery. Ruby is believed to be the only witness to the killing.
Poor Ruby was there by herself with her the entire time.
If only Ruby could talk.
I know. I called around to experts to find out if she ran into the person that did it, would they react differently? And they said she could shy back from them, but it's not a proven study.
Had Egypt's neighbors across the hall in her duplex been home that night, her family says they surely would have heard the gunshot. They believe it's no coincidence they were out of town.
The person who did this knew her schedule, knew her neighbor's schedule.
And they knew that her neighbors were out of town because everybody knew that her neighbors went to this festival.
From day one, cops have said Egypt likely knew her killer. Her father, Chuck, agrees.
Do you believe that she was killed by someone she knew?
Yes.
And if she knew her killer, then perhaps so do you.
Probably.
Who would want to kill your sister?
That's what I'd like to know. That's really what I'd like to know.
Initially, cops had one person in mind.
Generally, when someone is found murdered, the police always look at the significant other.
Yes.
Which would be you in this case.
The only thing I'm guilty of is loving her.
Cops quickly determined Curtis had no involvement in Egypt's murder.
Did you, even for a moment, consider the possibility that Curtis may have been involved?
No.
But then, who wanted Egypt Covington dead? Who had a motive and enough rage to murder the beautiful 27-year-old?
Is that, anybody that knew her and knew the situation that found out that she got murdered had one thought in her head.
That thought pointed to who, and it was kept tightly under wraps until now.
That makes me sick to my stomach.
Just as Crime Watch Daily starts to investigate Egypt's killing, police for the first time name a person of interest. The name comes as no surprise to most of Egypt's family and friends.
I begged her to stop talking to him.
During Curtis and Egypt's time apart, Beth Covington says the only person her sister ever dated was Kenny Michalak. At times, she claims the relationship was volatile.
He was so crazy and would look through her phone and would blow up her friends, like if she didn't answer. Where's she at? Where's she at? I found out about how many of her friends he slept with to belittle her, to make her feel worthless.
But Beth says she had no idea just how strained the relationship had become until their last family vacation on board a private yacht in the Caribbean.
She just started spewing like everything that has occurred over the years.
What did she say?
I heard about times where he would get mad and punch the wall next to her head. He really liked to shove her a lot, from what she told me. At a wedding that she attended, he threw her up against a wall.
Egypt didn't confide in many people about the alleged abuse, but she did tell Curtis what happened at the wedding.
After the wedding, I guess back at the hotel, there was a get-together, and he got physical with her. What she explained, it was more or less grabbing her, pushing her up against the wall, you know, and kind of restraining her.
According to Curtis, the cops were called, but no charges were filed.
From what she said, the wedding party, in their way, kind of made her feel guilty of, like, ruining the celebration.
Looking back on it, you wish that she had filed charges now?
I don't know if it would have changed the outcome or anything, but maybe that would have got more people, like her parents, aware of the situation.
Did Egypt ever share any problems as far as physical violence or?
She didn't mention to me about any physical violence. She did speak of arguments, verbal abuse.
Chuck Covington says his daughter certainly never told him about any of the alleged abuse, and he believes he knows why.
She might not have wanted him to get into more trouble than he would. Sharing it would have brought reaction, and maybe she didn't want the reaction.
Are you upset that no one told you what was going on?
Yeah. I've never really thought about it. It's what happened. It's how it worked. But yeah.
And you could have helped.
I'm sure.
With no police reports ever filed, Crime Watch Daily cannot verify the allegations of abuse made by her family and friends. We do know that Egypt eventually ended the relationship and the two remained friends.
It took a long time for her to actually make him understand that, like, they were broken up, and I think that maybe she could have been more stern.
When Egypt told Kenny she was back with Curtis, her sister claims he didn't take it well.
He called her was really upset.
The month before her murder, Curtis claims Kenny showed up at his house early one Sunday morning. He says, as usual, Egypt had spent the night.
I was on the third story, and she parked right in the parking lot, which is just right outside my window. I looked at her car, and I noticed his truck parked right behind it, and he was snooping around her vehicle, looking in the windows, and just kind of went around it one circle and then got in his truck and took off.
That's crazy.
Very crazy.
Curtis claims Egypt confronted Kenny about it, and he told her that he was in the area for work when he noticed her sunroof open in the rain.
What did your gut tell you was going on?
I thought possibly that he had some kind of tracker.
Kristen Covington claims her stepdaughter was starting to wonder the same thing.
She did mention that he was always, when she would go somewhere, that he would be there in the background.
The last time anyone saw Egypt and Kenny together was at the Belleville Strawberry Festival.
I let her know, I was like, hey, listen, you know, Kenny's here with so-and-so. And she's like, oh, really? Where? I'm like, well, he's by where you get your drinks.
Curtis claims the encounter was explosive.
Out of the corner of my eye, I can see her coming storming up to our table. He was right on her heels, like following her.
Curtis claims Kenny was enraged.
She said he found out that you were moving in.
And he was upset about it.
Yeah. I guess, you know, he, I don't know, maybe he felt like all hope is gone.
Did you get a sense from her that she was worried or really upset by him?
No. I never got the feeling that she was threatened by him.
But Egypt's stepmom claims she was in fact scared to tell Kenny that Curtis was moving in.
She was fearful. I said, do you think that this could be concerning? And she said, Mom, he's like a lost puppy. You know, I feel bad. And I said, well, we can't always save all lost puppies.
Gross. Egypt may not have been worried, but her sister Beth was.
It's very terrifying. Like, I was scared for her. Like, I really kept begging her, please stop talking to him. She was like, I promise, Sissy, I'll stop talking to him.
As As far as anyone knows, the last time Egypt and Kenny talked was at the Strawberry Festival. 1 week later, she was found shot to death. They claim Egypt's ex-boyfriend, Kenny Michalak, couldn't handle the fact that she was back with her longtime love, Curtis Meadows.
Was it difficult to have him constantly in the background while she was starting her relationship again with Curtis?
That made it very difficult.
They allege Kenny's temper exploded when he learned Curtis was moving in with her.
Telling him did not go all that well.
Exactly 1 week later, Curtis found Egypt's body.
Do you think any of those allegations of the abuse that may have been going on in her relationship with that ex-boyfriend had anything to do with her murder?
It would be connecting the dots. Those examples of violence are fact, and those are the only examples of violence that I know of in any of her relationships.
Is it really hard for you and your family to know if in your hearts you believe he is the one who killed your sister, that he is still out there?
Yeah, it makes me sick to my stomach. Makes me sick to my stomach that other people support him.
In an interesting twist, one of the people who supports Kenny is Egypt's own mother, Tina Covington. She doesn't believe Kenny was ever abusive toward her daughter.
She would come to my house and cry. They would get into arguments. He was not abusive to her. I don't care what anybody says. She would have told me, and I've never seen a mark on her.
However, in her very next sentence, she seems to confirm some level of abuse in the relationship.
There might have been an incident of pushing that I had heard about.
In the months following her daughter's murder, Tina allowed Kenny to babysit Egypt's dog, Ruby.
He loves Ruby. I know Egypt would have let him have Ruby. She let him take her anytime. And I couldn't say no.
But that upset your family?
Yeah. Yeah. And it wasn't that I was trying to do anything except he had to be suffering.
Why do you think they feel so strongly that he was involved and you feel so strongly he wasn't?
You know, I was raised to believe that you don't ruin somebody's life without proof.
Our interview with Tina Covington came weeks before cops officially named Kenny Michalak a person of interest in her daughter's murder. But that hasn't changed Tina's opinion. She believes after 9 months, cops simply felt pressured to name someone.
I don't want to be judgmental with it, but I think we have a small department. If they've come to a spot where they can't get any further evidence, I think they need to do the right thing and turn it over to the state police or somebody else.
She feels other potential suspects are being overlooked.
She worked in a job that everybody loved her, but she also was in a field that anybody could have followed her home.
Do you think that whoever killed your daughter, that it was a random person?
I think that Egypt was in the wrong place at the wrong time.
But it was her house.
I know.
She claims Egypt no longer felt safe in her own home.
She lived in a duplex. There was so much traffic going next door. And that's all I'm gonna say.
But cops in Van Buren Township tell Crime Watch Daily that right now, Kenny Michalak is their only person of interest in the case.
Now that police have named Egypt's ex-boyfriend as a person of interest in her murder, we've got some questions for him.
With so many accusations flying, we tracked down Kenny at the home he now shares with a new girlfriend to see if he'd talk with us.
Hey, Kenny. Hi, Anna Garcia from Crime Watch Daily.
This is audio of our conversation.
I don't mind answering questions, they just have to go through my lawyer.
But you've been named a person of interest in her murder.
I don't know, I'd have to talk to my lawyer. So,
when's the last time you saw her?
could you take all the questions from my lawyer, please?
Yeah, but is there anything you can tell us? I mean, we've been told by her family and friends that you were abusive towards her.
No, I was not.
Kenny denied ever abusing Egypt, but didn't want to talk about her murder.
Abusive. All my questions through my lawyer, please.
We will call him again. Thank you.
In a statement to Crime Watch Daily, Kenny Michalak's lawyer, Dan Gurin, writes, Van Buren Township Police noted in their recent press release that my client was not currently in communication with the department, which is a bit misleading. He fully cooperated with police, interviewed with them on multiple occasions, provided a full timeline of his whereabouts during the days surrounding Miss Covington's death, and has remained in town the entire 10 months of this investigation. Further, since being retained to represent him in late June 2017, I have reached out to and spoken with Van Buren Township Police on dozens of occasions, asking for updates and seeing if they needed anything from us. He goes on to be certain he continues to maintain his absolute innocence regarding anything to do with Miss Covington's death, as he has from the very beginning. And yet, beyond publicly naming Kenny in this still unfolding case, investigators have taken another rather strategic step, advising people who have donated billboards where to place them to help solve Egypt's murder. We spotted several in Kenny's neighborhood, even on his street.
Are you hoping that that is pressuring this person, keeping this crime in the foremost of their mind?
This is where I break from what my daughter would want me to say. But I hope the killer walks by there, drives by there, and gets so aggravated that they put a gun in their mouth. Take care of it for all of us.
For Egypt's boyfriend, Curtis Meadows, the billboards serve as a painful reminder of what he lost.
Sometimes I just put my hand over my heart. Sometimes I blow him a kiss. You know, sometimes it's just a little saying that I got you, Egypt, I got you, you know.
One thing everyone in Egypt's life agrees on, her killer must be brought to justice.
My sister deserved better than this, and my sister deserves justice. We deserve to know what happened.
I think that the police are doing everything that they can. I really, truly believe that. And I know that when they make that arrest, that it's gonna stay.
But sadly, even when that day comes, it won't do anything to fix the hole that's left in their hearts by Egypt's absence.
She is irreplaceable. This world is less without her in it, and that's what hurts the most.
3 years after her murder, Michigan State Police arrested Shane Evans and Timothy Moore in connection with Egypt's death. Moore was charged with first-degree murder, felony murder, home invasion, and 5 weapons charges, while Evans was charged with felony murder and home invasion. A third suspect, Shannon Groom, was also arrested for felony murder, home invasion, first-degree murder, and 3 weapons charges. The 3 men all pleaded not guilty. Police reportedly believe that Evans, Groom, and Moore went to the duplex where Egypt lived on June 22nd of 2017 to steal weed from her neighbors because Evans knew that the neighbor would be out of town that weekend. Evans reportedly told police that he explained to Groom and Moore which apartment to enter, but the men went into the wrong unit and killed Egypt instead. Groom's trial is scheduled to begin October 3rd of 2022 and Moore's on December 12th. Evans has a competency hearing scheduled for November 7th of 2022.